Lucy Harper never imagined that at 24 she'd be standing behind the counter of a roadside diner, balancing trays of greasy plates while her psychology degree collected dust in her cramped apartment. She had once dreamed of a meaningful career, helping struggling young people, maybe as a counselor or working for a non-profit. But dreams didn't pay the bills, and opportunities never arrived faster than rent notices. And so she stayed at Lakeview Diner, a small, old-school spot tucked away on a quiet street in Chicago. The job wasn't glamorous, but it kept the lights on and her fridge from going empty. Every day felt the same. The clatter of plates, the steady stream of coffee being poured, the familiar drone of regulars placing their usual orders. Lucy knew every face that walked through the door. There was Charlie Dawson, the old man who sat in the corner each morning, always ordering a black coffee, no sugar. Jen and Matt, the lively young couple who came in every Friday night and always shared a milkshake. The diner had its own charm, but to Lucy it felt like a still pond, one she had been wading through endlessly, unable to break free. But one late afternoon, everything changed. The door swung open, sending a gust of cold air through the room. Outside, a sleek black SUV idled at the curb. Two men in dark suits stepped in first, followed by a tall, lanky teenager with tousled light brown hair falling over his forehead. His cashmere coat screamed wealth, but the way he moved, awkward and uneasy, suggested he wasn't used to being the center of attention. The diner fell quiet. Whispers rippled through the room. Eyes locked onto Barron Trump, some in disbelief, others in curiosity. A few patrons discreetly raised their phones, trying to snap photos without drawing too much attention. Lucy barely spared him a second glance. She recognized him immediately. His face was on the news too often to mistake him for anyone else. But instead of gawking like the others, she simply tightened her apron and walked over, maintaining the same steady composure she had with every other customer. Barron slid into a cracked leather booth, his fingers twisting together on the table. The two men flanking him scanned the room like hawks sizing up threats. Lucy could feel the tension radiating from him, the unease lingering in his expression. She decided to speak first. "Hey there, what can I get for you?" Her tone was casual, her voice steady, no trace of curiosity, no sign of awe. Barron glanced up at her, his gaze flickering over her face before dropping back down to the table. Just a soda, please." His voice was quiet, almost lost beneath the murmurs surrounding them. Lucy nodded, scribbled it down, and turned away. She wasn't one to fawn over high-profile guests, and she certainly wasn't about to treat him any differently just because his last name was Trump. But the rest of the diner? They weren't so discreet. The stolen glances, the hushed whispers, the subtle tilt of phones angling for the best shot. It all made it painfully clear that Barron Trump couldn't just be a kid grabbing a soda at a diner. When she returned, she placed the drink in front of him with a quiet, "Let me know if you need anything else." Barron hesitated. He looked almost surprised. Maybe he was used to people staring at him like he was some kind of exhibit, or avoiding him like he was a walking controversy. But Lucy had done neither. For the first time that afternoon, his shoulders seemed to relax. One of the men beside him leaned in, whispering something. Barron followed his gaze toward a more secluded booth, farther from prying eyes. Lucy caught the hesitation in his expression, the reluctance flickering in his features. Without thinking, she spoke up. "The corner table is the quietest spot in the house." She gestured toward the empty booth. "If you want, I'll make sure no one bothers you." The two bodyguards eyed her, skeptical, but didn't object. Barron said nothing, just stood and moved toward the booth. Lucy quickly refilled his soda and adjusted the blinds, blocking out the lenses of any cameras from outside. For the next 20 minutes, she watched over the situation. A few customers grumbled about losing their perfect view, but Lucy didn't care. What mattered was that, for once, Barron Trump got to sit and just be. When he finally stood to leave, he turned to Lucy. He nodded. It was small, almost imperceptible. But Lucy understood. A silent thank you. She simply smiled back, her expression saying, "You're welcome." Lucy had no idea that this single, simple moment was about to change everything. By the end of her shift, Lucy peeled off her apron, stretching her aching fingers after a long day. She gathered her tips, a crumpled stack of small bills, and stuffed them into her worn-out wallet. The whispers about Barron Trump's visit still buzzed through the diner, but Lucy barely noticed. To her, he was just another customer, someone who needed a little kindness. Nothing more. When she finally got home, exhaustion hit her like a tidal wave. Her tiny apartment felt colder than usual. A single dim bulb lit the space, casting a glow over her faded couch and the half-finished puzzle that had been sitting on her coffee table for weeks. She dropped her bag by the door and sank onto the couch, her mind replaying the day's events. She had no idea that the small act of kindness she had shown today was about to turn her world upside down. The next morning, Lucy Harper arrived at the diner like usual, pulling her coat tighter against the biting Chicago wind. Lakeview Diner was as busy as ever, plates clinking, the scent of fresh coffee filling the air, the murmur of early morning conversations among the regulars. But today something felt off. The atmosphere was tense. Lucy sensed it the moment she walked in. People glanced her way, then quickly looked away, as if they knew something she didn't. She didn't have time to dwell on it before she spotted Nick Dawson, the diner's manager, standing near the counter. And he wasn't alone. A man in a black suit, clearly security personnel, was speaking with Nick in hushed tones. The moment Nick met Lucy's gaze, a wave of unease curled in her stomach. As soon as the suited man walked out, Nick turned to her, his expression cold as ice. "Lucy, my office. Now." His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the morning bustle like a razor. Her heart pounded as she followed him inside. The manager's office was cramped and smelled of stale coffee and old printer ink. Outdated motivational posters lined the walls, ones with cliché phrases like, "Success is a journey, not a destination." But nothing about this place felt like success. Nick sat down, arms crossed, but didn't bother offering her a seat. He just stared at her, tension radiating off of him. "What the hell were you thinking yesterday?" Lucy blinked, genuinely confused. "What do you mean?" Nick exhaled sharply, leaning back with a bitter smirk. "Don't play dumb, Lucy. You know exactly what I'm talking about." She frowned. "I really don't. I was just doing my job." Nick let out a humorless laugh. "You think moving Barron Trump to the most secluded table in the diner, pulling the blinds down and making everyone in here notice was just doing your job?" Heat rushed to Lucy's face. "I wasn't trying to attract attention. He was clearly uncomfortable with everyone staring at him. I just wanted to help him find some privacy." Nick shook his head, pressing his elbows against the desk. "Do you have any idea how many calls I got this morning? Reporters, news channels, random people wanting to confirm if Barron Trump was actually here." Lucy's eyes widened. "And that's somehow my fault? I didn't invite him here. I was just being a decent human being." Nick slammed his palm against the desk, making her jump. "Your fault is turning my diner into a damn media circus. I don't care what your intentions were. This is a business, not a publicity stunt." Lucy clenched her fists, forcing herself to stay calm. "Oh, you're really firing me, just because I was kind to a kid?" Nick leaned back in his chair, his glare sharp enough to cut glass. "I can't afford this kind of distraction. Effective immediately." For a moment, Lucy felt like she had been punched in the gut. Fired? For that? Anger swelled in her chest, but she swallowed it down. Arguing wouldn't change anything. Lucy turned on her heel and walked out, grabbing her bag with the last shred of dignity she had left. Not a single person in the diner met her gaze as she pushed through the door and stepped outside. The freezing January air bit at her face as she stood on the sidewalk. Tears burned at the edges of her eyes, but she blinked them back. Not here. Not on a random street in Chicago. She needed to focus. On finding another job. On surviving. But as she walked through the cold city streets, the weight of injustice pressed heavier on her chest. She had no idea that the door closing behind her was about to open another. One far bigger than she could have ever imagined. Lucy spent the rest of the day in a daze, the loss of her job weighing on her like a storm cloud. She sat on her worn-out couch, scrolling through job listings on her old laptop, her fingers trembling with frustration. Every job seemed to demand more experience or higher qualifications than she had. Rent was due in less than 2 weeks. And her savings? Barely anything. Her mind kept replaying her conversation with Nick. Had she really done something wrong? All she had done was show a little kindness. The more she thought about it, the more it felt like she was being punished for doing the right thing. Frustration tangled with helplessness, tightening in her chest like a knot she couldn't undo. That evening, Lucy Harper curled up on her worn-out couch in her tiny apartment, the glow of her laptop screen still illuminating the room. But she wasn't paying attention to job listings anymore. The buzzing of her phone pulled her out of her tangled thoughts. For a split second, she thought it might be Nick. Maybe he had changed his mind. But it wasn't. "Nara," she answered, and her best friend's concerned voice filled the line. "Are you okay?" Lucy hesitated before responding. "Not even close. I got fired today." "What?" Tara nearly screamed. "For what possible reason?" Lucy let out a heavy sigh, burying her face in a pillow before recounting everything. Her encounter with Barron Trump, the prying eyes in the diner, Nick's anger. Tara listened intently, only breaking her silence with bursts of outrage. "Are you kidding me? That's absolutely ridiculous. Nick is such a freaking idiot." By the time Lucy finished, Tara's voice was practically seething. "This is the most insane thing I've ever heard. You did nothing wrong, Lucy. If anything, you were the only person who did the right thing." Lucy traced the edge of her phone, her voice quiet. "Yeah, but kindness doesn't pay rent." A long silence. Then, Tara spoke again, her tone steady but firm. "You know, sometimes kindness finds a way to come back to you, just not always in the way you expect." Lucy closed her eyes, letting those words settle. She knew Tara was trying to lift her spirits, but right now, it all felt like a distant fantasy. Life hadn't exactly been throwing her any lifelines lately. The next morning, sunlight crept through her window, dragging along the dull ache of a sleepless night. Another uncertain day lay ahead. By late afternoon, Lucy sat at her small table, staring at her old laptop, debating whether she should pawn it for some quick cash. And then, her phone rang. An unknown number, the kind with too many digits to be local. Lucy hesitated before answering, her thumb hovering over the screen. "Hello?" Her voice was cautious. "Is this Lucy Harper?" A woman's voice. Calm, professional, but carrying an unmistakable warmth. Lucy blinked. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Helen Marks," the woman replied, her tone steady but friendly. "I'm calling on behalf of someone who was at the diner yesterday. They were impressed by your kindness and would like to discuss an opportunity with you." Lucy froze. Her heart skipped a beat. "Wait, what?" Helen continued, her voice unwavering, as if this had already been decided. "We'd like to meet with you to explain further. Are you available tomorrow afternoon?" Lucy furrowed her brows, her mind racing. A scam? A cruel joke? But there was something about Helen's voice. Genuine, certain. Not the voice of a con artist. Lucy swallowed hard. I guess so." "Good," Helen said, then gave her an address, an office building in the heart of downtown Chicago. "We'll see you tomorrow." And with that, she hung up. Lucy sat there, phone still in her hand, her palms suddenly damp. Her thoughts whirled in a storm of confusion. What the hell just happened? Was this real, or just some twisted prank? But one thing was certain. If this was her chance to turn her life around, she wasn't going to let it slip away. Lucy Harper sat upright in the cold leather chair, her fingers subtly gripping the hem of her blazer, trying to mask the tension coiling in her stomach. The 14th floor conference room of the towering glass skyscraper in downtown Chicago was vast, yet eerily quiet. Helen Marks, a sharp-eyed woman dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, tilted her head slightly, a faint, knowing smile touching her lips. "You're probably wondering why you're here," Helen began, her voice low but carrying undeniable weight. "Let me explain." Lucy swallowed hard and waited. "Your actions at the diner yesterday caught the attention of someone important." Helen paused, studying Lucy's reaction before continuing. "They saw how you treated Barron Trump, not as a spectacle but as a person. That kind of compassion is rare these days." Lucy blinked, surprised at the remark. "I was just doing what felt right," she finally said, her voice quiet but sincere. Helen exchanged a glance with the man sitting beside her, who had been silently observing until now. He gave a slight nod, as if confirming something unspoken. "Exactly," Helen said smoothly. "And that's why we wanted to meet you today." She gestured toward the man, an older gentleman with salt and pepper hair and an air of quiet authority. "This is Mr. Franklin," she continued. "He's a philanthropist who works closely with organizations dedicated to supporting young people and promoting kindness within communities. He was at the diner yesterday. He saw everything." Lucy's confusion deepened. I'm sorry, but what does that have to do with me?" For the first time, Franklin spoke. His voice was steady, carrying an unmistakable depth of sincerity. "We want to offer you a position, Lucy." Her breath caught in her throat. "An opportunity to work with our organization, coordinating community outreach programs, inspiring acts of kindness the same way you did yesterday." Franklin leaned forward slightly. "It's a full-time position with a salary that I believe would more than address your current concerns." Lucy felt the world tilt slightly. A job offer? Right now? It was like a gust of fresh air in the middle of a suffocating desert, an escape she never even dared to hope for. But why her? Why me? Her voice was barely a whisper. Franklin studied her for a moment before speaking. "Because you didn't do it for recognition," he said, his tone calm but firm. "You did it because it was the right thing to do, and that's exactly the kind of person we need." Lucy sat there, speechless. The last 24 hours, getting fired, feeling lost, drowning in uncertainty, now crashed over her all at once. This offer felt like a lifeline, but it also felt sudden, too big, too overwhelming. Helen seemed to sense her hesitation and leaned forward slightly. "We're not asking for an answer right now," she said, her voice measured. "Take a day or two to think about it. If you decide to accept, we'll provide everything you need to get started." Lucy nodded slowly, her mind still spinning. "Thank you," she said finally. "I'll think about it." She walked out of the skyscraper in a daze, gripping Helen's business card as if it were a golden ticket. For the first time in a long time, she felt a spark of hope. But along with it came doubt. Was she really ready for a change this big? She had no way of knowing that saying yes would lead her down a path she never could have imagined, one that would test her courage and redefine the very meaning of her life. That night, Lucy sat on her worn-out couch, staring at the business card on the table in front of her like it held an answer she wasn't sure she was ready for. She had spent hours turning the offer over in her mind. It was an incredible opportunity, almost too good to be true. But it was also terrifying. What if she wasn't cut out for this? What if she failed? The doubts spiraled, wrapping around her like chains, until she finally grabbed her phone and called Tara. Her voice was shaky but determined. "I need your advice." She laid everything out, every single detail. On the other end, Tara listened, her occasional gasps of disbelief breaking the silence. When Lucy finished, Tara didn't even hesitate. "Lucy, this is it. This is the sign you've been waiting for. You wanted change? Well, here it is. Don't let fear hold you back." Lucy squeezed her eyes shut, gripping the phone. "But what if I mess it up? What if they regret giving me a chance?" "Then you'll learn from it," Tara said firmly. "But you'll never know unless you try. You've already shown you have the heart for this. Now, let them see it." A strange calmness washed over Lucy. Tara was right. She had spent so long waiting for something to change. Now that it finally had, she couldn't let fear stop her. Early the next morning, Lucy Harper took a deep breath before pressing the call button. The phone rang once, then twice. When Helen Marks answered, Lucy could hear the smile in her voice, as if she already knew the decision she was about to make. "Good morning, Lucy. I hope you've had time to think things over." Lucy gripped her phone tighter, her heart pounding in her chest. "I'm accepting the job," she said. Her voice was still slightly unsteady, but there was more certainty in it than ever before. On the other end, Helen let out a soft, approving chuckle, a smile woven into her words. "I knew you would. Welcome to the team, Lucy." In that moment, Lucy felt something shift, a door opening before her, one she had never imagined she'd have the courage to step through. The days that followed were a whirlwind of meetings, planning sessions, and unfamiliar faces. Lucy was introduced to the organization, a network of dedicated individuals working tirelessly to improve the lives of those in need. From education programs for at-risk youth to mentorship initiatives for the homeless, every project revolved around one central truth. Compassion isn't just an act, it's a way of life. The job wasn't easy. She had to learn how to coordinate events, work with local officials, fundraise, and tackle challenges she had never faced before. But the surprising thing was, she didn't back down. If anything, she thrived. Lucy's first major project took her to a community shelter in South Chicago, a place where hundreds of children needed a safe haven to learn and grow after school. She poured everything into the program, meeting with local leaders, securing funding, rallying volunteers. There were nights she stumbled home exhausted, but inside her something had reignited, a fire she thought had long since burned out. For the first time in years, she knew she was doing something that mattered. On the day of the program's launch, Lucy stood in a quiet corner, watching in silence. Children filed in, their faces lighting up as they explored the tiny library, the tech-equipped classrooms, the vibrant play areas. Laughter filled the space, eyes sparkled with hope. Lucy felt her throat tighten. This was what she had always wanted, to help people, to be part of something bigger than herself. And it had all started with one simple moment in a small diner that day. One late afternoon, after a long meeting, Lucy returned to her office to find an envelope resting on her desk. There was no company logo, no postmark. The sender's name made her pause. Barron Trump. Her hand trembled slightly as she opened it. The letter was brief but heartfelt. "Thank you for treating me like a regular person that day. Thank you for shielding me from the world when I needed it most." Lucy read it again and again. A slow, genuine smile spread across her face. She had once thought that small kindnesses went unnoticed, that they would eventually be forgotten. But no act of compassion is ever wasted. Even if the reward isn't immediate, the choice always matters. And it always spreads in ways we can never predict. Lucy set the letter down, a newfound resolve shining in her eyes. If one small act could create this kind of impact, then she would dedicate her life to making more of them. Because on that day, in that small Chicago diner, when she looked into the eyes of a boy who just needed a moment of peace, she had chosen kindness. And that choice changed everything. This story has touched your heart. We'd love for you to share its message by liking and sharing it with your friends, helping us reach our first milestone of 1,000 subscribers, which means the world to us and allows us to create more meaningful stories for you. Don't forget to share your thoughts about the story and let us know which city you're watching from. Thank you for your support, and we'll see you in our next story.